very few people label me right-wing for some of the videos that I put out on this channel. Then again, some people label me left-wing, and others accuse me of sitting on the fence and staying right in the middle and not expressing an opinion, whereas other people criticize me for expressing an opinion. So I really can't win either way, so I expect this video to be no different. If you find yourself likely to be in that camp, you can either skip the video altogether, because this is likely to be one of those, or just know that your comments will contribute to the YouTube algorithm, or you can watch it with an open mind, because I really do try to just present the facts to you. I try to avoid opinion where I can, and if I do give you an opinion, first of all, I make it clear that it's my opinion, and secondly, I am free to give you my opinion. It's my channel, and that is protected under Article 10 for the freedom of expression. And so if you do like that sort of thing, whether it's to the left or the right or somewhere in the middle with you, then please do consider subscribing to the channel. I will always be open and honest with what I say here. So this video is by popular demand and request about the immigration and asylum situation in the UK, the small boat arrivals, what the UK spends on them, the publication of statistics and things like that. Now, the first thing that when I did some research for this, because these videos do take me some time to research, so for that alone, I'd appreciate the subscribe button being bopped down below with the like button. But with the first bit of research that comes out of this is quite alarming in that straight from the Home Office statistics of their expenditure, the Home Office seems to spend almost 3 times as much money on asylum support, resettlement and accommodation as it does on border force and immigration enforcement, spending some £5.6 billion on asylum support, resettlement and accommodation. And of course, this expenditure obviously represents everything they spend on asylum seekers and support and housing and so on, which we'll come to in this video. The statistics of which are somewhat alarming, with over 67,000 applications for asylum made in the UK in 2023, which related to 84,000 individuals. And again, according to official websites, as of June 2024, the total work in progress asylum caseload consisted of 224,700 cases. So 250,000 cases in progress all at the same time. Now onto the issue of small boats. 99% of small boat arrivals apply for asylum, meaning they qualify for certain support. But then let's just back up and pause for a moment, because a lot of people have raised the question, is this not an immigration offence to come to the UK undocumented, without a visa and so on? And many people might be upset to think that people come to the UK in breach of these laws when other people coming here legally on spouse visas and all that sort of stuff. I have a personal story about that in a moment, because we went through that very difficult process, because many of you know my wife's Chinese and we had to go through that whole process, but more about that in a minute. The simple answer to whether it is an offence to enter the UK without valid permission and visa, etc. is yes, but with a caveat. Under the Immigration Act of 1971, not only is it an offence to enter the UK in breach of a deportation order, which I suppose it applies to far fewer people, but it is more broadly an offence if a person requires permission to enter the UK under this Act and knowingly enters the UK without such permission. In other words, if you enter the UK without such a visa or permit to enter the UK, you are guilty of an offence. However, and as always, it's not quite as simple as that. You see, the UK is a signatory to the 1951 Refugee Convention, which in essence means that an individual claiming asylum should not be returned to a country where they face serious threats to their life or to their freedom. This is known as non-refoulement. Now, the problem here is people then say, well, why don't we just send them back to France? Now, this might be something that you agree with, just send them back to France and it's France's problem. But then we have the issue of Brexit. You see, before Brexit, we had the Dublin Regulation, which was an EU-wide agreement which established rules for which country was to determine an asylum application. Under the Dublin Regulation, an asylum seeker could have been sent back to the first EU country they arrived at where their asylum claim could have been processed. But this is where the real tension comes in, because for a long time the UK has had rules and provisions that could refuse an asylum claim if there was indeed a third safe country such as France to which they could return the asylum seeker. However, again, since Brexit and without the Dublin Regulation and without any bilateral agreement with countries such as France, there is simply no formal mechanism for returning any asylum seeker to any third safe country such as France or to any other country from which they came. However, once here and having claimed asylum, it is a matter of fact that they do get quite substantial support. The government website confirms what support they get, which includes housing. It says you'll be given somewhere to live if you need it. This could be a flat, a house, a hostel, bed and breakfast, such as hotels around the country. You cannot choose where you live as an asylum seeker, and it's unlikely that you get to live in London or the southeast of England. Cash support. You'll also get £49.18 for each person in the household, and this will pay for things like food, but if the accommodation provides meals, you get £8.86 for each person in the household instead. Now, on the one hand, a lot of people will complain that it costs the state nigh on £50 a week for every person that claims asylum in the country. On the other hand, housing aside, living on just over £7 a day cannot be easy. So arguably, this is not a great arrangement for anybody concerned. However, that's not all they are provided. They also get free prescriptions, dental care, eyesight tests and glasses, and education. And just for the sake of comparison, if you wanted to come to the UK on a family visa, for example, a spouse visa, there are a significant number of hoops to jump through. And believe me, we've been through them and they're not easy. First of all, your partner must be a British or Irish citizen, be settled in the UK, or a few other requirements. You'll need to prove lots of other things as well. For example, a good knowledge of English, which will usually require an examination, such as a degree which was taught in the English language, or some other qualification that is based in English for your level of English. You must meet the financial requirements, for which you must prove that you've got a combined income of at least £29,000 a year, which is a minimum income requirement. You also need to prove, which can be rather degrading, that you've either been living together in a relationship for at least 2 years when you apply, or that you've been in a relationship for at least 2 years, which might be, for example, when your partner is overseas at the time when you apply, but you cannot live together, for example, because you're working or studying in different places, or it's not accepted in your culture. And to do that, you might need to prove it with reams of documents proving telephone calls between you and all communications between you, just to prove that you've been in this relationship for the last 2 years if you're not living together. You also need to prove, if you're applying for a spouse visa, that any previous marriage or civil partnerships ended, and that you plan to marry or become civil partners within 6 months of arriving in the UK. And you'll also not be able to work or study during your engagement. Now, the reason for this video in the first place is that there's been lots of questions raised over the security in the UK because of arrivals by small boats, and we're not the only ones. France has now reportedly followed Germany in raising border controls to what it called serious threats posed by terrorists and migratory flows, in the latest blow to the Schengen scheme. The Schengen scheme was free movement between EU states. The French government statement apparently declared that the checks were introduced due to serious threats to public policy, public order, and internal security posed by high-level terrorist activities, criminal networks facilitating irregular migration and smuggling, and migration flows that risk infiltration by radicalized individuals. And so, long story short, in a roundabout kind of way, the UK's hands are somewhat tied in what it can do about small boat arrivals without breaking the law to which it's currently a party to, particularly with the Refugee Convention and no bilateral agreement to return migrants to France. And with France's latest announcement on securing its borders, that's only going to get more difficult. And on a very serious note, and I don't think this is even the slightest bit politically motivated, I think it would be naive to suggest that hundreds and thousands of illegal migrants entering the UK by small boat does not pose any kind of security threat to the UK, particularly when many of them are undocumented and we have no idea who they are, where they're coming from, what their criminal history is, and anything of that nature. That is certainly not a political thing to say. It is just a very fact of national security. But one thing that I do hear is that a lot of people being labelled right-wing or extremist views for saying so. I think, frankly, with all respect, it would be naive to suggest that it's perfectly safe to have thousands of people entering the country about whom we know next to nothing. So as I stress, and as I say, this is a question and a matter of fact rather than extreme political opinion. So please do have the discussion and let me know what you think in the comments below. In the meantime, please do like the video and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.